In a world saturated with noise where the hum of notifications, the clamor of traffic, and the endless scroll of screens drown out the whispers of our hearts. There is a man named Daniel standing at the edge of a crowded subway platform, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the blur of an approaching train. He's not thinking about the meeting he's late for or the emails piling up in his inbox. He's thinking about the argument he had with his wife last night, the sharp words that cut deeper than he intended, and the silence that followed heavier than any sound. Daniel is 38, a father of two, a mid-level manager at a tech firm, and like so many of us, he's tired. Tired of juggling deadlines, bills, and the unspoken expectations of a life that feels like it's slipping through his fingers. He wonders as the train screeches to a stop if this is all there is. This cycle of stress, regret, and fleeting moments of joy that never seem to last. Daniel doesn't know it yet, but this moment, this ordinary Tuesday morning, is where his story begins to shift. It's not a grand epiphany or a bolt of divine lightning. It's something quieter, something that starts with a stranger's small act of kindness. As he steps onto the train, lost in his thoughts, he doesn't notice the elderly woman struggling with her bags behind him. She stumbles and her groceries spill across the floor, oranges rolling a loaf of bread tumbling under a seat. Daniel turns instinctively and sees her. For a split second, he hesitates. He's late. He's exhausted. But then he kneels, gathering her things, offering a smile as he hands her the bread. "Thank you," she says, her voice soft but warm, her eyes meeting his with a gratitude that feels disproportionate to the act. And in that fleeting exchange, something stirs in Daniel, a flicker of connection, a reminder of something he's forgotten. This is where we begin in the ordinary, in the small moments that seem insignificant, but carry the weight of eternity. Pope Francis once said, "Mercy is the very foundation of the Church's life." All of her pastoral activity should be caught up in the tenderness she makes present to believers. Nothing in her preaching and in her witness to the world can be lacking in mercy. These words, spoken in 2015 during the announcement of the Jubilee Year of Mercy, are not just for the devout or the clergy. They are for Daniel, for the woman on the train, for you and me. They are a call to see the world through the lens of compassion, to choose tenderness over judgment, to recognize that every person we meet is carrying a burden we cannot see. Mercy, as Pope Francis teaches, is not a passive sentiment. It's an active choice, a way of being that transforms the mundane into the sacred. It's what Jesus embodied when he sat with sinners, when he washed the feet of his disciples, when he looked into the eyes of the woman caught in adultery and said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." This teaching, rooted in the Gospel of John, is as radical today as it was 2,000 years ago. In a world quick to judge, to cancel, to divide, Jesus offers a different path, one of understanding, forgiveness, and second chances. For Daniel, this moment on the train is a spark, but it's not enough to change his life, not yet. He arrives at work, still late, still distracted. His boss, a man named Greg, is waiting for him, his tone sharp as he points out Daniel's missed deadlines. Daniel feels the familiar knot of resentment tighten in his chest. Greg is younger, ambitious, the kind of person who seems to thrive on pressure while Daniel struggles to keep up. "You need to step it up," Greg says. His words clipped his eyes already on his phone. Daniel nods, swallowing the urge to argue, to explain the sleepless nights, the sick kid, the fight with his wife. He sits at his desk, staring at his computer, feeling the weight of expectations pressing down. But then he remembers the woman on the train, her gratitude, her eyes. And he wonders, what if he tried to see Greg the way he saw her, not as a boss, not as a critic, but as a person? Maybe Greg is stressed too. Maybe he's dealing with his own pressures, his own unseen burdens. It's a small thought, but it shifts something in Daniel. Instead of firing off a defensive email or stewing in silence, he decides to act. He walks to Greg's office, knocks lightly, and says, "Hey, I know I've been off lately. I'm working on it. Anything I can do to help with the project?" It's not a grand gesture, but it's a start. Greg looks surprised, then nods. "Yeah. Actually, could you take a look at the client brief? I'd appreciate your input. For the first time in weeks, they have a real conversation, not just a transaction." This is what mercy looks like in practice. Small, intentional steps toward understanding. Pope Francis has often spoken of the revolution of tenderness, a phrase he used in his 2013 apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium. He describes it as a way of living that enters the reality of people's lives, bridges distances, and touches the wounds of others. Tenderness is not weakness, it's courage. It's the courage to see the humanity in someone who frustrates you, to offer kindness when you'd rather retreat, to listen when you'd rather speak. Let's pause here and consider how this applies to our own lives. Think of someone who challenges you, a coworker who grates on your nerves, a family member who pushes your buttons, a stranger who cuts you off in traffic. What would it look like to choose mercy over judgment in that moment? It doesn't mean ignoring boundaries or excusing harm. It means recognizing that every person is more than their worst moment, that they, like you, are navigating a world of stress and struggle. Here's a practical step. The next time you feel anger or frustration rising, take a breath and ask yourself, what might this person be carrying? This simple question can shift your perspective, softening the edges of judgment. Then act. Offer a kind word, a listening ear, or even just a silent prayer for their peace. These acts don't erase conflict, but they plant seeds of connection, creating ripples that extend far beyond the moment. Daniel's day continues, and the spark from the train grows brighter. At lunch, he overhears a colleague, Sarah, talking about her son's recent diagnosis. She's trying to sound upbeat, but her voice cracks, and Daniel notices the way she twists her napkin, her knuckles white. He could keep eating, pretend he didn't hear. But instead, he sets down his sandwich and says, "Sarah, I'm really sorry to hear about your son. How are you holding up?" She hesitates, then opens up, sharing her fears, her exhaustion. Daniel listens, not because he has answers, but because he knows what it's like to feel alone in your worries. When she thanks him, her eyes bright with unshed tears, he feels that same flicker from the train, a sense of purpose, of being part of something bigger. This is the heart of Christ's teaching in the parable of the Good Samaritan, found in Luke 10:25-37. A man is beaten and left for dead on the side of the road. A priest and a Levite pass by, too busy or too righteous to help. But a Samaritan, an outsider, stops. He binds the man's wounds, takes him to an inn, and pays for his care. Jesus tells this story in response to the question, "Who is my neighbor?" His answer is clear. Your neighbor is anyone in need, anyone you encounter, anyone you have the power to help. Mercy doesn't discriminate. It doesn't ask whether someone deserves it. It acts. Pope Francis echoes this in his 2016 book, The Name of God is Mercy, where he writes, "Mercy is the divine attitude that embraces it, is God's giving himself to us, accepting us, and stooping to forgive." For Daniel, this means seeing Sarah not just as a co-worker, but as a neighbor in the biblical sense, a person whose pain calls for his response. It's a small act listening to her, but it's a step toward living out this divine attitude. Let's bring this closer to home. Imagine you're at the grocery store and the cashier is slow, distracted, maybe even rude. Your instinct might be to snap or complain. But what if you paused and considered, maybe she's working a double shift, maybe she's worried about a sick parent, maybe she's just having a bad day. A kind word. "Hey, thanks for your work. Hope your day gets better" might not change her life, but it might change her moment. And it changes you too, aligning your heart with the tenderness Christ modeled. Here's another practical reflection at the end of each day. Take 5 minutes to journal or reflect on one act of mercy you offered or received. It could be as simple as smiling at a stranger or forgiving someone who hurt you. Write it down, not to boast, but to notice how these moments accumulate, how they reshape your perspective. Over time, you'll see that mercy isn't just an action. It's a way of seeing the world. Daniel's day isn't over. When he gets home, the tension from last night's argument still lingers. His wife Emily is in the kitchen chopping vegetables with a focus that feels like avoidance. Their kids, Mia and Ethan, are in the living room absorbed in their tablets. The house is quiet, but it's not the peaceful kind of quiet. It's the kind that hides hurt. Daniel wants to apologize, but pride tugs at him. He was right, wasn't he? She overreacted, didn't she? Yet the memory of the train of Sarah of Greg nudges him forward. He steps into the kitchen, takes a breath, and says, "Em, I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk?" Emily pauses, her knife still, then turns to him. Her face softens, and she nods. They sit at the table, and it's not perfect. They're both tired, both human, but they listen. They forgive. And in that moment, their home feels a little less like a battlefield and a little more like a sanctuary. This is what Pope Francis means when he speaks of the domestic church, a term he's used in homilies and writings, including his 2015 address to families in Philadelphia. The family, he says, is the first place where mercy is learned and lived. It's where we practice patience, forgiveness, and love, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Jesus taught this too in Matthew 18:21-22, when Peter asked how many times he should forgive his brother. 7 times Peter suggested, thinking he was being generous. Jesus replied, "Not 7 times, but 77 times." Forgiveness, like mercy, is limitless. For Daniel and Emily, this conversation is a step toward rebuilding trust. It's not a single act, but a commitment to keep choosing each other, to keep choosing mercy. And it's a reminder for all of us. The people closest to us are often the hardest to show mercy to, but they're also the ones who need it most. Here's a practical step for your relationships when conflict arises. Try the pause and pray. Method. Before responding in anger, take a moment to breathe and silently ask for grace. It could be a simple prayer. God, help me see this person with your eyes. Then speak not from pride or defensiveness, but from a place of love. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about channeling them through compassion. As Daniel lies in bed that night, he thinks about the day the train, Greg, Sarah, Emily. He's still tired, still uncertain about the future, but he feels lighter. He's starting to see that mercy isn't just for others. It's for him too. By offering kindness, by listening, by forgiving, he's finding his way back to himself, to the man he wants to be. And in the quiet of the night, he whispers a prayer, not for answers, but for the strength to keep going, to keep choosing tenderness in a world that so often feels hard. This is the promise of mercy. It doesn't erase our struggles, but it transforms them. It turns a crowded train into a moment of connection, a tense workplace into a place of understanding, a strained marriage into a journey of healing. Pope Francis and Christ both point us to this truth, that mercy is the bridge between our brokenness and God's grace, between our ordinary lives and the extraordinary love that sustains them. As we move forward in this story, Daniel's journey will deepen. He'll face bigger challenges, moments that test his resolve, but he'll also discover the joy that comes from living with an open heart. For now, let's hold on to this: every act of mercy, no matter how small, is a step toward a kinder life. It's a step toward the world Jesus envisioned, the world Pope Francis calls us to build, a world where love triumphs over judgment, where tenderness becomes our revolution. So wherever you are today, whatever burdens you carry, know this: you are not alone. You have the power to choose mercy, to change a moment, to transform a life, starting with your own. Keep going, keep loving, and let the quiet strength of compassion guide your way. Daniel wakes to the soft glow of dawn filtering through the curtains. The world outside still quiet, except for the distant chirp of birds. It's Saturday, a rare day without the rush of work, but his mind is already stirring. Last night's prayer lingers, a fragile thread of hope woven through the exhaustion that still clings to him. He glances at Emily, still asleep, her face softened by the morning light. The memory of their conversation, tentative but honest, feels like a small victory, a crack in the wall that's been growing between them. He slips out of bed, careful not to wake her, and pads to the kitchen to make coffee. The house is peaceful, but Daniel knows peace is fleeting today, like every day will bring its own challenges. As the coffee brews, he thinks about the past week, the woman on the train, the moment with Greg, listening to Sarah, reconciling with Emily. These weren't grand gestures yet. They've left him feeling more alive, more connected than he has in months. He's beginning to see that mercy, as Pope Francis describes it, isn't just about forgiving others. It's about waking up to the world around you, seeing people as they are, not as obstacles or irritations. In his 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si', Pope Francis writes, "We are called to be instruments of God's mercy, to care for our common home and for each other with love that transcends differences." Daniel doesn't know the exact words, but he feels their truth in his bones. Mercy is a way of living, a lens that changes how you see everything. Today, that lens will be tested. Daniel's brother Mark is coming over with his family for lunch. Mark is 2 years older, a successful lawyer with a sharp wit and a tendency to dominate conversations. Their relationship has always been complicated. Part admiration, part rivalry, with a history of small wounds that never fully healed. Mark's life seems polished, effortless, a big house, private school for his kids, vacations Daniel can only dream of. Daniel tries not to compare, but it's hard when Mark's presence feels like a mirror reflecting his own insecurities. Emily senses it too. Last night, as they cleaned the kitchen, she said, "Just don't let him get under your skin." "Okay." Daniel nodded, but he knows it's easier said than done. By noon, the house is alive with noise. Mia and Ethan are chasing their cousins through the living room, shrieking with laughter. Mark's wife Laura is helping Emily set the table, their conversation light but warm. Daniel grills burgers in the backyard, the smell of charcoal mingling with the summer air. Mark stands nearby, a beer in hand, talking about his latest case, a high-profile divorce that's been in the news. "It's messy," Mark says, shaking his head. "People tear each other apart over money. Kids, you name it. Makes you glad for what we've got, right?" He gestures toward the house. The kids, the life Daniel sometimes feels, is slipping away. Daniel forces a smile, flipping a burger. "Yeah, we're lucky." But the words feel hollow. He thinks about the overdue mortgage payment, the argument with Emily, the constant juggle of work and family. Lucky isn't the word he'd choose. Mark doesn't notice launching into another story about a client. Daniel listens, but resentment simmers. Why does Mark always have to one-up him? Why does every conversation feel like a subtle competition? Then he remembers the train, the moment with the elderly woman. He thinks of Jesus' words in Matthew 7:1-2. "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be measured." It's a teaching. Pope Francis has echoed time and again, urging us to set aside judgment and embrace humility. In a 2016 homily, Francis said, "Mercy begins with our own poverty, with recognizing that we are all sinners, all in need of God's love." Daniel takes a breath, letting the resentment ebb. Maybe Mark isn't trying to brag. Maybe he's just sharing his world, unaware of how it lands. Maybe he's carrying his own burdens, hidden behind the polished exterior. Instead of retreating into silence, Daniel tries something new. "Sounds intense," he says, turning to Mark. "How do you deal with all that stress? Those cases must weigh on you." Mark pauses, surprised, then shrugs. "You get used to it. But yeah, it's heavy sometimes." Laura says, "I bring it home too much." For the first time, Daniel hears a crack in Mark's confidence, a hint of vulnerability. They talk not about achievements, but about the toll of their work, the challenge of being present for their families. It's not a deep confession, but it's real, a bridge over the gap that's always been there. This is mercy in action, choosing curiosity over judgment, listening instead of competing. It's what Jesus modeled in his encounters with people like Zacchaeus, the tax collector shunned by his community. In Luke 19:1-10, Jesus doesn't condemn Zacchaeus. He invites himself to his house, offering acceptance before change. Pope Francis reflects on this in "The Name of God is Mercy" writing. Jesus looks at people with eyes that see their hearts, not their sins. He meets them where they are and calls them to something greater. For Daniel, this means meeting Mark where he is not as a rival, but as a brother. Lunch is chaotic, but joyful. The kids spill juice, the adults laugh, and for a moment, Daniel feels the warmth of family, imperfect but precious. After eating, he and Mark take the kids to a nearby park. The cousins run ahead, climbing a jungle gym, while Daniel and Mark sit on a bench. The conversation turns to their childhood, to memories of their dad who passed away 5 years ago. "He'd love this," Mark says, watching the kids. "He always said family was everything." Daniel nods, but the mention of their dad stirs something painful. Their father was loving but distant, a man who worked long hours and left discipline to their mom. Daniel always felt he fell short of his expectations, while Mark seemed to effortlessly win his approval. "I don't know," Daniel says, his voice quieter. "I always felt like I was letting him down." Mark looks at him surprised. "You Dad was proud of you. He used to tell me how you stuck with things, how you never gave up." Daniel blinks, caught off guard. All these years he'd carried a story of inadequacy, unaware of his father's pride. The revelation doesn't erase the past, but it softens it like light breaking through clouds. This moment echoes another of Pope Francis's teachings, the call to reconciliation. In his 2015 address during the Synod on the Family, he said, "The Church is called to be a field hospital, binding wounds, healing relationships, and helping people find peace with God and each other." Reconciliation isn't just about saying sorry. It's about seeing the truth, letting go of old narratives, and making space for healing. Jesus taught this in the parable of the prodigal son, Luke 15:11-32, where the father doesn't just forgive his wayward son, but runs to meet him, embracing him before he can even speak. Mercy precedes apology. It creates the space for transformation. For Daniel, this conversation with Mark is a step toward reconciling with his past. It's not a full resolution. Years of sibling tension don't vanish in an afternoon, but it's a beginning. He realizes that mercy extends to himself too, to the boy who felt he wasn't enough, to the man still learning to forgive his own shortcomings. Let's pause and apply this to our lives. Think of a relationship strained by misunderstanding or resentment, a parent, a sibling, a friend. What story have you been carrying about them or about yourself? What would it look like to approach them with mercy, to ask a question instead of assuming, to listen instead of defending? Here's a practical step. Write a letter to someone you've drifted from. Don't send it yet. Just write. Pour out your feelings, your hopes, your questions. Then, if you're ready, reach out. Not to fix everything, but to start a conversation. Mercy begins with openness, with the courage to say, "I see you, and I want to understand." Back at the park, the kids' laughter pulls Daniel from his thoughts. Ethan, his 6-year-old, runs over breathless, holding a dandelion. "Make a wish, Dad," he says, thrusting it forward. Daniel blows, watching the seeds scatter, and Ethan giggles, chasing them. Mark grins. He's a good kid. "You're doing all right, Dan." It's a small compliment, but it lands deeply. Daniel realizes he's been so focused on his failures, late nights at work, missed soccer games, that he's overlooked the moments that matter, like this one. This brings us to another teaching from Pope Francis, one rooted in Christ's example, the call to be present. In his 2013 homily for the Feast of the Holy Family, Francis said, "The family is a community of life and love where we learn to be attentive to others, to share their joys and sorrows." Jesus embodied this in his ministry, always present to the people before him, whether feeding the 5,000, comforting Mary and Martha, or blessing children. In Mark 10:13-16, when the disciples try to shoo away parents bringing their kids to Jesus, he rebukes them, saying, "Let the little children come to me." He sees them, holds them, blesses them. Presence is an act of mercy, a gift of your time and attention. Daniel is learning this with his kids. That evening, after Mark's family leaves, he suggests a movie night. Usually, he'd be on his phone half listening as Mia and Ethan bicker over snacks. Tonight, he puts the phone away. They watch. Finding Nemo, and when Ethan curls up against him, Daniel feels the weight of his small body, the trust in it. Mia asks questions about the movie, and instead of shushing her, he answers, sparking a silly debate about whether fish can really talk. Emily joins them laughing, and for the first time in weeks, they feel like a team. Here's a practical reflection for you. Choose 1 hour this week to be fully present with someone you love. No phones, no distractions. Play a game, take a walk, or just talk. Notice their expressions, their words, their silences. Presence isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up heart, open, ready to see and be seen. As the weekend fades, Daniel faces a new challenge. Monday looms, and with it, a major project deadline. Greg has been pushing the team hard, and Daniel's been struggling to keep up. Sunday night, he's up late reviewing spreadsheets, his anxiety spiking. He thinks about Sarah, whose son's illness has kept her out of the office, and wonders how she's coping. He sends her a quick text. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." It's a small gesture, but it feels right, a way to extend the mercy he's been practicing. Sarah responds the next morning. "Thanks, Daniel. It's been rough, but that means a lot." At work, he notices her absence more keenly, the extra load it puts on the team. Greg is stressed, snapping at everyone, and Daniel feels the old resentment creeping back. But he remembers Pope Francis's words from Amoris Laetitia 2016. Mercy is the fullness of justice and the most radiant manifestation of God's truth. Mercy doesn't ignore accountability. It tempers it with love. So instead of joining the team's grumbling, Daniel offers to take on one of Sarah's tasks. "I can handle the client follow-up," he tells Greg. "Let's give her some space." Greg nods, visibly relieved, and the team's tension eases slightly. This is the ripple effect of mercy. One act inspires another, creating a chain of kindness. Jesus taught this in the Beatitudes. Matthew 5:7. "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." It's a promise that mercy returns to us, not always in obvious ways, but in the peace it brings, the connections it fosters. Daniel feels this at the end of the day when Greg pulls him aside. "Thanks for stepping up," he says. "I know it's been a lot. It's not an apology, but it's progress, a crack in the wall between them." Let's bring this home. Think of a situation where you feel overwhelmed, work, family, or both. How can you extend mercy even in small ways? Maybe it's covering for a struggling colleague like Daniel did, or simply offering a word of encouragement. Here's a practical step. Identify one person in your circle who seems stretched thin. Do something concrete to lighten their load: a meal, a note, a helping hand. Mercy isn't just emotional, it's practical, grounded in action. As Daniel drives home, he reflects on the week. He's still tired, still worried about bills and deadlines, but he's also hopeful. Mercy has become his compass, guiding him through conflicts with Mark, moments with his kids, and challenges at work. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't erase his struggles. But it gives him a way to navigate them, a way to live that feels aligned with something greater. Pope Francis often speaks of the throwaway culture, a term he used in Laudato Si to describe a world that discards people, resources, and relationships when they're no longer useful. Mercy is the antidote, a commitment to value every person, every moment. Jesus lived this, choosing the marginalized, the lepers, the tax collectors, the sinners over the powerful. In John 13:34-35, he gives his disciples a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. This love rooted in mercy is what Daniel is discovering step by step. As he pulls into his driveway, he sees Emily through the window reading to Ethan. Mia is sprawled on the couch drawing. The sight fills him with gratitude, not because life is perfect, but because it's real, and he's choosing to show up for it. He knows the road ahead won't be easy. There will be more arguments, more deadlines, more moments of doubt. But he also knows he's not alone. Mercy, as Pope Francis and Christ teach, is God's presence in the mess, a light that shines in the ordinary, a call to keep loving, keep forgiving, keep trying. And so Daniel steps into his home, ready to face whatever comes next, armed with the quiet strength of a kinder life. The journey continues not with grand heroics, but with small, faithful choices. Choices that echo the heart of Christ, the vision of Pope Francis, and the hope of a world made new by mercy. The autumn air carries a crisp edge as Daniel steps out of his car, the gravel crunching under his shoes in the church parking lot. It's Sunday morning, and the bells are ringing, calling families to Mass. Mia and Ethan are in the back seat, bickering over a toy while Emily adjusts her scarf, her face calm but tired. Daniel feels a mix of anticipation and unease. They've been coming to church more regularly since the summer, a shift sparked by his growing awareness of mercy. But today feels different. There's a guest speaker, a priest known for his work with the homeless, and Daniel's been asked to help coordinate the parish's outreach program afterward. It's a role he accepted reluctantly, unsure if he's the right person for it, but Emily encouraged him, saying, "You've been different lately. This could be good." Inside the church is warm, filled with the soft hum of greetings and the scent of incense. Daniel guides his family to a pew, his eyes scanning the familiar faces, older couples, young parents, teenagers slouching with earbuds. He thinks about Pope Francis's words from his 2013 apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium. The church must be a place of mercy, freely given, where everyone can feel welcomed, loved, forgiven, and encouraged to live the good life of the gospel. Daniel's starting to understand what that means, not just in theory, but in the mess of real life. He's been practicing mercy with Mark, with Greg, with Emily. But today, he senses a new challenge, one that will push him beyond his comfort zone. The Mass begins, and the guest priest, Father Michael, steps to the pulpit. He's older, with a weathered face and a voice that carries both gentleness and conviction. His homily centers on the parable of the lost sheep from Luke 15:1-7, where Jesus describes a shepherd leaving his 99 sheep to find the one that's lost. This is God's heart, Father Michael says. He seeks out the forgotten, the broken, the ones society overlooks. And he calls us to do the same, not out of duty, but out of love. Daniel listens, his mind drifting to the outreach program. He's never worked with the homeless before, never faced poverty up close. The idea intimidates him, stirring a mix of compassion and fear. Pope Francis has often spoken of this call to reach the margins. In his 2016 address to the World Meeting of Popular Movements, he said, "Mercy is not an abstract ideal, but a concrete action, a commitment to walk with those who suffer to share their pain and their hopes. This echoes Jesus' ministry, where he didn't just preach from a distance, but touched lepers, ate with outcasts, and wept with the grieving. Daniel feels a tug, a sense that this is where his journey of mercy is leading out of the familiar into the unknown. After Mass, the outreach meeting is held in the parish hall. About 20 people gather, a mix of longtime volunteers and newcomers like Daniel. Father Michael explains the program, a weekly initiative to provide meals, clothing, and conversation to the homeless in the city's downtown. It's not about fixing people, he says. It's about seeing them, listening to them, letting them know they're not invisible. Daniel volunteers to help with meal distribution, a role that feels manageable but still daunting. As the group discusses logistics, he notices a woman across the room, Linda, who's been volunteering for years. She's quiet but confident, her hands marked by years of hard work. Daniel feels a pull to talk to her to learn from her experience. He approaches her after the meeting, introducing himself. "I'm new to this," he admits. "Any advice for someone starting out?" Linda smiles, her eyes kind but direct. "Just show up," she says. "Don't try to solve their problems. Listen. Be present. That's what matters." Her words resonate, reminding Daniel of the moments that have changed him, helping the woman on the train, listening to Sarah, being present for his kids. Mercy, he's learning, often starts with simply being there. The following Saturday, Daniel drives downtown for his first outreach shift. The city feels different here, raw and unpolished. People shuffle along sidewalks, some carrying bags, others huddled in doorways. The parish team sets up tables in a vacant lot, offering hot soup sandwiches and blankets. Daniel's nervous, unsure how to act, but he follows Linda's lead. She greets each person by name, her voice warm, her questions simple. "How's your week been? You staying warm?" Daniel watches, struck by how she makes connection look effortless. His first interaction is with a man named Tony, maybe in his 50s, with a graying beard and a worn jacket. Tony takes a sandwich, muttering a thanks, and Daniel hesitates before saying, "I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you." Tony glances up, surprised, then nods. "Tony. Good soup." It's a small exchange, but Daniel feels a spark, the same flicker he felt on the train months ago. Over the next hour, he talks to others. A young woman named Jess, who loves poetry. An older man named Carl, who tells stories of his days as a mechanic. Each conversation chips away at Daniel's unease, replacing it with a quiet awe. These are people, not problems, each with stories, dreams, and pain. This is the essence of Jesus' teaching in Matthew 25:35-40. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Pope Francis amplifies this in his 2015 homily for the World Day of the Poor, saying, "The poor are not a burden, but a gift, a chance to encounter Christ in those who suffer." For Daniel, this morning is more than charity. It's a revelation, a glimpse of God in the faces of Tony, Jess, and Carl. Let's pause to reflect. Think of someone in your life who feels invisible. A neighbor who keeps to themselves, a co-worker who's always overlooked, a stranger you pass every day. What would it look like to see them, really see them? Here's a practical step this week. Strike up a conversation with someone you wouldn't normally talk to. Ask their name, their story, or just how they're doing. Listen without an agenda. Mercy begins with attention, with refusing to let someone fade into the background. Back at home, Daniel shares the experience with Emily. They're in the kitchen washing dishes while the kids play upstairs. It was humbling, he says, scrubbing a plate. These people have nothing, but they're so human. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Emily listens, her hands still in the soapy water. You're changing, she says softly. I can see it. Her words catch him off guard, a reminder of how far he's come since that morning on the train. But he also feels the weight of what's ahead. This work, this call to mercy, isn't a one-time thing. It's a commitment, a way of life. The next week brings a new test. At work, Greg announces a restructuring plan. The company's cutting costs, and Sarah's position is at risk due to her frequent absences. Daniel's heart sinks. Sarah's been back part-time juggling her son's treatments, and she's one of the hardest workers he knows. Greg seems conflicted but firm. It's business, he says in a team meeting. We have to prioritize efficiency. Daniel feels a surge of anger. Efficiency. What about loyalty, compassion, humanity? He thinks of Father Michael's homily of the shepherd seeking the lost sheep. Sarah isn't just an employee. She's a person, a mother, a colleague who's carried their team through tough projects. Instead of staying silent, Daniel speaks up after the meeting, catching Greg alone. I get that we need to cut costs, he says. But Sarah's been through hell. Isn't there a way to keep her on even part-time? Greg sighs, rubbing his temples. It's not that simple, Daniel. The numbers don't lie. But Daniel presses not with anger, but with conviction. She's not a number. She's one of us. If we lose her, we lose more than a position. Greg doesn't commit, but he promises to reconsider. It's not a win, but it's a step, a moment where mercy challenges the cold logic of profit. This courage reflects Pope Francis's call to be missionaries of mercy, a phrase he used in his 2016 Bull of Indiction for the Jubilee of Mercy. He writes, Mercy is the force that reawakens us to new life and instills in us the courage to look to the future with hope. Jesus modeled this in his confrontation with the Pharisees, who prioritized rules over people. In Mark 2:27, he says, The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Mercy humanizes systems, reminding us that people matter more than policies. Here's a practical reflection. Think of a situation where you see injustice, a workplace decision, a community issue, a family conflict. How can you advocate for mercy without compromising truth? Try this. Write down one action you can take to speak up for someone who's being overlooked. It might be a conversation, an email, or a quiet act of support. Mercy doesn't always change the outcome, but it changes the conversation, planting seeds for a kinder world. Daniel's advocacy for Sarah strengthens his resolve, but it also deepens his awareness of his own limits. He can't fix everything. Not Sarah's job, not Tony's homelessness, not the world's brokenness. This realization hits him one evening as he's helping Mia with her homework. She's struggling with math, frustrated to tears, and Daniel feels his patience fraying. Come on, Mia, you've done this before. He snaps, then catches himself. Her eyes well up, and he feels a pang of guilt. He's been so focused on showing mercy to others that he's overlooked his own family, the place where it's hardest and most essential. He takes a breath, remembering Pope Francis's words from Amoris Laetitia. The family is the setting in which a new life is not only born, but also welcomed as a gift of God. Daniel pulls Mia into a hug, apologizing. "I'm sorry, kiddo. Let's figure this out together." They work through the problem slowly, and though it's not perfect, Mia's smile returns. Daniel realizes that mercy starts here in the daily grind of parenting, where love is tested not by grand gestures, but by patience and presence. This echoes Jesus' teaching in John 13:14-15, after washing his disciples' feet. "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." Mercy is humble, rooted in service, especially in the unglamorous moments. For Daniel, it's helping Mia with fractions, listening to Ethan's endless stories, supporting Emily through her own stress. Let's apply this. Think of a moment when you lost patience with someone close, a child, a partner, a friend. How can you show mercy next time? Try this. When frustration rises, pause and picture Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Let that image guide your response, whether it's a kind word, a hug, or just staying silent until the anger passes. Mercy in the home is the foundation for mercy in the world. As weeks pass, Daniel's life weaves together these threads of mercy outreach with the homeless advocacy at work, presence at home. But a new challenge looms. Tony, the man from the outreach, stops showing up. Linda tells Daniel that Tony's been struggling, possibly back on drugs, and no one's seen him for days. Daniel feels a mix of worry and helplessness. He's grown to care about Tony, their brief talks a highlight of his Saturdays. The news shakes him, reminding him how fragile progress is, how mercy doesn't always lead to tidy outcomes. One cold morning, Daniel drives downtown alone, hoping to find Tony. He checks the usual spots, alleys, shelters, the park, but there's no sign of him. As he walks, he prays not for answers, but for guidance. He thinks of Pope Francis's 2017 homily for the World Day of the Poor. We are called to draw near to the poor, to encounter them, to meet their gaze, to embrace them, and to let them feel the warmth of love. Daniel doesn't know if he can help Tony, but he knows he can't give up. Mercy, he's learning, is about fidelity, about showing up even when the results are uncertain. He finally spots Tony outside a convenience store, sitting against a wall, his eyes distant. Daniel approaches, crouching down. "Hey, Tony. Been worried about you." Tony looks up, his face weary but softened by recognition. "Didn't think anyone'd notice," he mumbles. They talk not about solutions, but about life. Tony's past, his hopes, his fears. Daniel offers to buy him coffee, and they sit in a nearby diner, the warmth of the mug a small comfort. Tony doesn't promise to change, and Daniel doesn't push. But as they part, Tony grips his hand, saying, "Thanks for not giving up. It's enough for now." This moment captures Jesus' promise in Luke 6:36. "Be merciful just as your Father is merciful." God's mercy doesn't demand perfection. It meets us where we are, offering love without conditions. Pope Francis reflects this in Gaudete et Exsultate, 2018, writing, "Holiness is not about great deeds, but about loving God and others in the ordinary moments of life." For Daniel, holiness is this coffee with Tony, this refusal to walk away. Here's a final reflection. Think of someone in your life who seems lost, a friend battling addiction, a family member drifting away, a stranger in need. How can you show them mercy not by fixing them, but by being present? Try this. Commit to one act of fidelity this month, checking in, offering a meal, or simply praying for them. Mercy doesn't always change the story, but it keeps the door open for grace. As Daniel drives home, the city fading into suburbs, he feels a quiet strength. His life isn't perfect. Sarah's job is still uncertain. Mia's math struggles persist. Tony's future is unclear, but he's learning to live with open hands, trusting that mercy is its own reward. He thinks of his family waiting at home, and of the God who seeks the lost, who never gives up. This journey, he knows, is far from over, but each step brings him closer to the kinder life he's seeking. A life shaped by the heart of Christ, the vision of Pope Francis, and the power of mercy to transform the world, one encounter at a time. Winter has settled over the city, cloaking it in a gray chill that seeps into bones and spirits alike. Daniel stands at the kitchen window watching snowflakes drift lazily to the ground, his breath fogging the glass. It's early December, and the house is quiet, save for the soft hum of the heater and Ethan's occasional giggle from the living room where he's building a fort with blankets. Emily is at a holiday party for her book club, and Mia is upstairs, her music faintly audible through the ceiling. Daniel sips his coffee, now lukewarm, and feels the weight of the past few months pressing on him, not oppressive, but heavy, like a coat he's still learning to wear. The journey of mercy that began on a crowded subway platform has woven itself into his life, changing how he moves through the world. He's grown closer to Emily, more present with Mia and Ethan, and more open with Mark. His Saturdays with the homeless outreach have become a cornerstone, a place where he encounters both the brokenness and beauty of humanity. Yet, as Christmas approaches, Daniel senses a new layer to this call, a challenge to extend mercy inward to himself and outward to a world that feels increasingly divided. The news is relentless: political vitriol, economic strain, stories of violence that make hope feel like a fragile thing. Even at church, he's overheard arguments about policies and priorities, a reminder that even faith communities can fracture under pressure. This morning, Daniel's thoughts are with Tony, the man he met at the outreach. Their coffee together a few weeks ago was a moment of connection, but Tony's still struggling, drifting in and out of the program. Daniel's also thinking about Sarah, whose job was spared after Greg found a way to reallocate funds, though she's still stretched thin by her son's medical needs. These stories, once distant, now feel personal, intertwined with his own. He's learning that mercy isn't a straight line. It's a spiral circling deeper into the heart of what it means to be human. As he rinses his mug, the phone buzzes with a text from Father Michael Outreach Team Meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Big plans for Christmas. Can you make it? Daniel hesitates. He's tired, and the idea of another commitment feels daunting. But he thinks of Pope Francis's words from his 2017 message for the World Day of Peace. Mercy is the heart of peace, a commitment to build bridges and break down walls, to choose encounter over isolation. Daniel types back, "I'll be there," and feels a spark of purpose, small but steady like a candle in the dark. The meeting is held in the parish hall, where folding chairs are arranged in a circle and a pot of coffee brews in the corner. Linda is there, her calm presence, a quiet anchor, along with a dozen others, some familiar, some new. Father Michael outlines the plan, a Christmas dinner for the homeless, not just a meal, but a celebration with music decorations and gifts. We want them to feel seen, he says, to know they're part of our family. The team brainstorms volunteers for cooking donations for gifts, a local band to play carols. Daniel offers to help organize donations, a task that plays to his strengths from work. As the discussion unfolds, he feels a stirring, a sense that this is more than logistics. It's a chance to embody Christ's love in a tangible way. This vision aligns with Jesus' teaching in John 10:10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. For Jesus' life wasn't just survival, but abundance, joy, connection, belonging. Pope Francis echoes this in his 2019 apostolic exhortation, Christus Vivit, writing, Christ's love is not a fleeting sentiment, but a force that transforms, that invites us to share his joy with others, especially those who feel forgotten. Daniel sees this in the Christmas dinner plan, a chance to offer not just food, but dignity, a reminder that every person is worthy of celebration. The next day, Daniel starts reaching out for donations. He emails colleagues posts on the parish's social media and talks to local businesses. Most are generous, offering gift cards, coats, or cash, but a few are skeptical. One store manager, a gruff man named Paul, questions the point. Why bother? They'll just waste it, he says, his tone more weary than cruel. Daniel feels a flash of frustration, but remembers the outreach, the faces of Tony, Jess, and Carl. He takes a breath, channeling Pope Francis's call to dialogue from Fratelli Tutti 2020. Mercy requires us to listen to understand, even when we disagree, to build a culture of encounter. Fair point, Daniel says calmly. But I've met these folks. They're not perfect, but neither am I. A coat or a meal might not fix everything, but it shows them someone cares. That's a start. Paul shrugs, unconvinced, but hands over a box of gloves, muttering, Do what you want with these. It's not a grand victory, but Daniel feels a quiet triumph. Mercy doesn't always change hearts instantly. It plants seeds, trusting God to do the rest. This encounter reminds Daniel of Jesus' interaction with the rich young man in Mark 10:17-22. The man asks what he must do to inherit eternal life, and Jesus, looking at him, loved him before challenging him to sell his possessions. The man walks away sad, unable to let go, but Jesus doesn't condemn him. His love precedes judgment, offering a path forward, even if it's not taken. Daniel's learning to love like this, not demanding change, but offering possibility, trusting that mercy works in its own time. Let's pause for a reflection. Think of someone in your life who seems closed off, a skeptic, a critic, or just someone stuck in their ways. How can you show them mercy without compromising your values? Here's a practical step. The next time you face resistance, try responding with a question instead of an argument. What makes you feel that way? Or, can you tell me more? These questions open doors, creating space for understanding. Mercy doesn't erase differences. It bridges them, fostering dialogue where judgment might build walls. Back at home, the Christmas season brings its own pressures. Mia's school play is coming up. Ethan's obsessed with his Christmas list, and Emily's juggling work deadlines with holiday prep. Daniel feels the familiar pull of stress, the temptation to retreat into his phone or his worries. But he's been practicing presence, inspired by the outreach and Father Michael's homilies. One evening, he suggests a family tradition, decorating the tree together, no distractions. Usually this is a rushed affair with Daniel half focused on work emails. Tonight he puts his phone in another room and they laugh as Ethan tangles himself in tinsel Mia, insisting every ornament needs a story. Emily catches Daniel's eye, her smile soft, and he feels the warmth of connection, fragile but real. This moment reflects Pope Francis's emphasis on the domestic church, a concept he's highlighted in addresses like his 2015 homily in Philadelphia. The family is where we first learn mercy, where we practice love in the ordinary moments that shape us. Jesus taught this too in his care for the small details of life, turning water into wine at a wedding. John 2:1-11. Blessing children sharing meals. For Daniel, decorating the tree isn't just a holiday ritual, it's a sacrament of presence, a way to live out Christ's love in the heart of his home. Here's a practical reflection. Choose one family activity this week, cooking, a walk, a game, and commit to being fully present. Notice the laughter, the quirks, the moments that pass too quickly. Write down one thing you learned about someone you love. Mercy in the family is about seeing them anew, cherishing the ordinary as a gift. As the Christmas dinner approaches, Daniel's role in the outreach grows. He's not just collecting donations, but helping plan the event, coordinating volunteers, and even recruiting Mia and Ethan to make decorations. Mia, now 10, is curious about the outreach, asking why people live on the streets. Daniel explains as best he can, balancing honesty with hope. Some people have had hard lives, but we can help by showing them they're not alone. Mia nods, her face serious, and Daniel sees a spark of compassion in her, a reminder that mercy is taught through action, not just words. The dinner is held in a community center, transformed with lights, tables, and Mia's paper snowflakes. Volunteers serve roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and pie, while a local guitarist plays Silent Night. Daniel moves through the crowd, greeting familiar faces, Jess, who recites a poem she wrote, Carl, who jokes about the gravy. Tony's there too, looking cleaner, his eyes clearer than the last time they met. Daniel pulls him aside, offering a gift bag with socks and a scarf. "Glad you're here," Daniel says, and Tony smiles a rare, genuine grin. "Didn't want to miss this," he says. They talk, and Tony shares that he's been staying at a shelter trying to get clean. It's not a fairy tale ending, but it's progress, and Daniel feels a surge of gratitude. This scene embodies Jesus' vision in Luke 14:12-14, where he urges his host to invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind to the banquet, promising a reward in eternity. Pope Francis reflects this in his 2016 homily for the Jubilee of the Homeless. The poor are our brothers and sisters invited to the table of God's kingdom where there is room for all. The Christmas dinner is a glimpse of that kingdom, a place where mercy creates community, where everyone has a seat. But the night isn't without challenges. A man Daniel doesn't know, agitated and possibly drunk, disrupts the meal, shouting about unfair treatment. Volunteers tense, unsure how to respond. Daniel feels a knot of fear but remembers Linda's advice. Just show up. He approaches the man, keeping his voice calm. "Hey, I'm Daniel. Want to grab some food and talk?" The man glares but follows, sitting with a plate of turkey. His name's Ray, and as he eats, he vents about losing his job, his family, his hope. Daniel listens, not fixing, but witnessing, offering presence as a form of mercy. Ray quiets, eventually thanking Daniel before leaving. It's a small moment, but it matters, a reminder that mercy meets people in their mess, not their perfection. Let's reflect again. Think of a time you faced someone's anger or pain, maybe a stranger, maybe someone close. How can you respond with mercy next time? Try this. When tension rises, practice listening without solving. Let the person speak, holding space for their feelings without rushing to fix or judge. Mercy is often silent, a willingness to stand with someone in their struggle. The dinner's success lingers with Daniel, but so does Ray's pain, Tony's fragility, the world's brokenness. At work, he faces another test. Greg's pushing for a new project that prioritizes profit over employee well-being, cutting hours for part-timers like Sarah. Daniel's tempted to stay quiet. His voice didn't fully save Sarah's job last time, but he thinks of Pope Francis's call in Laudato Si, 2015. We are called to care for our common home, to prioritize people over systems, to live with an integral ecology that values human dignity. Jesus challenged systems too, overturning the money changers' tables. John 2:13-16. Not out of anger, but out of love for God's house and its people. Daniel meets with Greg, framing his concern as collaboration, not confrontation. I know profit matters, he says, but these cuts hit people like Sarah hard. Can we find a balance? Greg's defensive at first, citing budgets, but Daniel persists, suggesting a phased approach that protects hours. Greg agrees to review it, a concession that feels like progress. Mercy Daniel's learning isn't just soft, it's strategic advocating for justice with compassion. Here's a practical step. Identify one system in your life. Work, school, community where people are devalued. Take one action to advocate for change, like speaking up in a meeting or writing a letter. Mercy doesn't dismantle systems overnight, but it challenges them one voice at a time. Christmas Eve arrives, and Daniel's family attends midnight mass. The church glows with candles, the choir singing, "O Holy Night." Father Michael's homily focuses on the incarnation. God becoming human to share our struggles. Mercy, he says, is God's choice to enter our mess, to be born in a stable, to walk with us. Daniel feels this deeply, thinking of the outreach, his family, his own imperfections. He's not the man he was a year ago, not because he's perfect, but because he's trying, choosing mercy in small, faithful ways. After Mass, they drive home under a starlit sky. Ethan asleep in the back seat. Mia humming carols. Emily reaches for Daniel's hand. Her touch, a quiet affirmation. At home, they exchange gifts, simple ones given their budget. But the real gift is their presence, their laughter, their shared journey. Daniel thinks of Jesus' words in Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Mercy, he realizes, is peacemaking, building bridges in a fractured world. Let's close with a reflection. This holiday season, how can you be a peacemaker? Try this. Choose one person or situation where conflict lingers. Offer a gesture of mercy, a call, a kind word, a prayer. Write down how it feels, not to boast, but to anchor the moment. Mercy is a gift you give, but it's also a gift you receive, transforming you as it transforms others. As Daniel lies in bed, the house quiet, he feels a deep gratitude, not for a perfect life, but for a meaningful one. Tony's at the shelter. Sarah's still fighting. Ray's out there somewhere, but Daniel's part of their stories, and they're part of his. The world's still broken, but mercy is his compass, guiding him through the dark. he thinks of Pope Francis's vision, Christ's love, and the promise of a kinder life, a life where every act of mercy, no matter how small, echoes the heart of God, drawing the world closer to peace. The first light of spring creeps through the blinds, painting soft stripes across Daniel's bedroom. It's early April, and the world outside is stirring buds on the trees, birdsong threading through the morning air. Daniel lies awake, his mind already turning not with the anxious churn of last year, but with a quiet resolve. The past months have been a crucible forging something new in him, a commitment to mercy that's reshaped his relationships, his work, his faith. The Christmas dinner for the homeless, the advocacy for Sarah, the moments with Emily and the kids. They've all been steps in a journey that began with a stranger's spilled groceries on a subway train. Now, as the season of renewal unfolds, Daniel faces a final challenge to carry this mercy forward, not as a fleeting resolution, but as a lifelong calling, even when the world pushes back. He rises, slipping on a sweater against the morning chill, and heads to the kitchen. Emily's already there, stirring oatmeal, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. She smiles a warmth that's grown steadier since their reconciliation last year. "Big day today," she says, nodding toward the calendar on the fridge. It's circled in red, the parish's spring outreach festival, a community event Daniel's been helping plan. Unlike the Christmas dinner, this one's broader, inviting not just the homeless, but the wider neighborhood families, seniors, anyone seeking connection. Father Michael's vision is ambitious, a day of food, music, and service, a living testament to Pope Francis's call in Fratelli Tutti 2020. We are all brothers and sisters called to build a culture of encounter where mercy becomes the foundation of our shared life. Daniel feels both excitement and pressure. Organizing the festival has stretched him, coordinating volunteers, securing permits, managing a tight budget. He's leaned on Linda's experience and Father Michael's guidance, but doubts linger. What if it flops? What if people don't show? He thinks of Jesus' words in Matthew 6:34. "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Mercy Daniel's learned isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, trusting God with the outcome. The festival is held in a local park, its grassy expanse dotted with tents and tables. By noon, the air hums with life kids chasing balloons, a bluegrass band strumming, volunteers serving barbecue. Daniel moves through the crowd, checking on logistics, but also pausing to talk. He sees Tony, who's been at the shelter more consistently, helping serve drinks. Looking good. Dan Tony says his grin a small victory. Jess, the poet from the outreach, is there too, reading her work to a small group, her voice steady. Even Ray, the man who disrupted the Christmas dinner, shows up quieter now, accepting a plate of food with a nod. Daniel feels a swell of gratitude, not because everything's fixed, but because these connections exist, fragile threads of mercy weaving a community. This scene reflects Jesus' vision in Luke 15:7. There will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Pope Francis echoes this in his 2016 homily for the Jubilee of Mercy. God's joy is the joy of forgiveness, of welcoming back the lost, of celebrating every step toward healing. The festival isn't just an event, it's a celebration of second chances, a glimpse of heaven's joy in the here and now. But the day isn't without tension. A group of teenagers from the neighborhood, bored and restless, starts causing trouble, knocking over a table, taunting volunteers. Daniel's first instinct is frustration. He's poured weeks into this, and they're disrespecting it. He remembers Pope Francis's words from Christus Vivit 2019. Young people are not the problem. They are the promise of the future, yearning for meaning even when they push us away. Jesus showed this mercy with his disciples, who often misunderstood him, yet he patiently taught them, as in Mark 9:33-37, when he welcomed a child to teach humility. Daniel approaches the teens, keeping his tone calm. "Hey, I'm Daniel. You guys having fun?" They smirk, one muttering, "This is lame." Instead of scolding, Daniel tries a different tack. "Fair enough. What would make it better? We've got a basketball court over there. Want to play?" The offer catches them off guard, and after some posturing, they agree. Daniel recruits a few volunteers, and soon a pickup game starts, laughter replacing sneers. It's not a miracle, but it's a shift, a moment where mercy disarms conflict, inviting connection over confrontation. Let's pause for a reflection. Think of a time you faced disruption, maybe a defiant child, a rude stranger, or a disruptive coworker. How can you respond with mercy next time? Try this. When tension flares, offer an invitation instead of a rebuke. It could be a question, a shared activity, or a kind gesture. Write down the outcome, noticing how mercy transforms the moment. It's not about excusing behavior, but about seeing the person behind it, offering a path to something better. Back at the festival, Daniel's focus shifts to his family. Mia and Ethan are helping at a craft table, painting signs with messages like, "You are enough." Emily's chatting with Linda, their laughter, a reminder of how the outreach has woven their lives together. Daniel joins them, and Mia runs over, showing him her sign, "Love Wins." He hugs her, struck by how she's absorbing the lessons he's still learning. This echoes Pope Francis's call in Amoris Laetitia 2016. The family is a school of mercy where we learn to love, forgive, and grow together. Jesus taught this in his tenderness with families, like raising Jairus' daughter, Mark 5:35-43, showing that love restores life. Here's a practical step. Create a family ritual that fosters mercy. It could be a weekly gratitude circle where each person shares something they're thankful for, or a kindness challenge where you track acts of compassion. For Daniel, it's moments like this at the festival where his kids see mercy in action, shaping their hearts as much as his. As the festival winds down, Daniel faces a new challenge at work. Greg's new project, the one Daniel questioned, is moving forward, but it's straining the team. Sarah's hours are safe, but others are stretched thin, morale dipping. Daniel's tempted to disengage. His voice didn't fully change Greg's mind last time, but he thinks of Pope Francis's words in Laudato Si, 2015. We are called to an integral ecology where care for people and the planet go hand in hand, challenging systems that dehumanize. Jesus confronted systems too, as in Matthew 23, calling out hypocrisy, not to condemn, but to call back to truth. Daniel schedules a meeting with Greg and a few colleagues, proposing a team wellness plan. Flexible hours, mental health resources, small changes that prioritize people. He frames it as a win-win. Happy employees mean better work. Greg's skeptical citing costs, but the team's input sways him to pilot the plan. It's not a revolution, but it's progress. A reminder that mercy in the workplace is about persistence, advocating for dignity one step at a time. Let's reflect. Think of a system in your life, work, school, community that feels dehumanizing. How can you advocate for mercy? Try this. Identify one small change you can propose, like a policy tweak or a support initiative. Present it collaboratively, focusing on shared benefits. Mercy doesn't always topple systems, but it humanizes them, creating space for change. The festival's success ripples into Daniel's personal life. Mark and his family attend, and Daniel notices a shift in their dynamic, no longer competitive, but collaborative. Mark helps grill burgers, joking with volunteers, and later pulls Daniel aside. "This is amazing, Dan. I'm proud of you." The words hit deep, healing old wounds from their childhood. Daniel thinks of the parable of the prodigal son, Luke 15:11-32, where the Father's mercy restores both sons, not just the one who wandered. Pope Francis reflects this in his 2015 homily, "For the family mercy heals the fractures in our relationships, inviting us to see each other as God sees us." Here's a practical reflection. Think of a strained relationship, sibling, parent, friend. How can you extend mercy to heal it? Try this. Write a letter, even if unsent, expressing your hope for reconciliation, then take one step toward connection. A call, a visit, a kind gesture. Mercy in relationships is about humility, choosing love over pride. As spring deepens, Daniel faces a personal reckoning. The outreach work and family have filled his life, but he's neglected himself, his health, his spirit. He's gained weight, skipped workouts, and feels the toll of constant giving. One evening, alone in the backyard, he sits under the stars, wrestling with guilt. How can he preach mercy if he's burning out? He thinks of Pope Francis's words from Gaudete et Exsultate, 2018. Holiness is not about doing more, but about being more, about letting God's mercy flow through us, starting with ourselves. Jesus modeled this retreating to pray. Luke 5:16, balancing service with solitude. Daniel starts small morning walks, 10 minutes of prayer, a checkup with his doctor. He's honest with Emily, admitting he's stretched thin. She listens, then suggests they share the load, alternating outreach days, carving out time for rest. This self-mercy is new humbling, but it strengthens him, reminding him of Jesus' words in Mark 12:31. Love your neighbor as yourself. Mercy. Outward requires mercy, inward, a balance Daniel's learning to embrace. Let's pause. Where in your life do you need mercy for yourself? Try this. Identify one area. Health, rest, emotions where you're depleted. Take one concrete step toward care, like a walk, a journal entry, or a conversation with a friend. Mercy for yourself isn't selfish. It's the foundation for giving to others. The outreach continues, but Daniel's perspective shifts. He's less focused on outcomes. Tony's sobriety, Ray's stability, and more on presence, trusting God's timing. One Saturday, he meets a new face, Maria, a single mom who's been couch surfing with her toddler. She's wary, but accepts a meal, and Daniel listens as she shares her fears. He connects her with a shelter program, not fixing her life, but offering a step forward. This echoes Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman, John 4:1-42, where he offers living water, not a solution, but a relationship, a promise of grace. Pope Francis captures this in his 2016 book, The Name of God is Mercy. Mercy is God's identity, His way of meeting us in our weakness, inviting us to trust. For Daniel, mercy is trusting that his small acts, listening to Maria, serving at the festival, advocating at work, matter even when the results are unseen. One evening, Daniel sits with his family reflecting on the year. They're on the porch, the kids eating popsicles, Emily's hand in his. He thinks of the train, the spark that started it all, and how mercy has become his compass, guiding him through conflict, doubt, and joy. He's not perfect. Arguments with Emily still flare. Work stresses persist. Tony's journey wavers, but he's faithful, choosing mercy daily. This fidelity reflects Jesus' promise in Matthew 5:7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Pope Francis amplifies this in his 2017 homily for the World Day of the Poor. Mercy is not a burden, but a gift transforming us as we give it. Daniel feels this transformation, not a dramatic overhaul, but a quiet deepening, a life aligned with love. Let's close with a final reflection. How can you make mercy a lifelong calling? Try this. Create a mercy journal, noting one act of mercy you give or receive each day. Over time, you'll see patterns, moments where God's grace shines through. Mercy isn't a destination. It's a journey, a way of living that echoes Christ's heart, Pope Francis's vision, and the promise of a kinder world. As Daniel watches the sunset, Mia's laughter ringing out, he feels a profound peace. The world's still broken. Poverty persists. Division grows, his own flaws remain. But mercy is his response, his rebellion against despair. He thinks of Tony's grin, Sarah's resilience, Emily's love, and knows he's part of something bigger, a tapestry of grace woven through ordinary lives. With each act of mercy, he's building the kingdom one encounter at a time, trusting that love, as Mia's sign declared, will always win.